was the leading story. Now, we can first start by introducing our guest, Philip Etale. He is the ODM Communications Officer, Manager, actually, Director, I should say. You know, titles are very important. Philip Etale has also been a journalist here at the Nation Media Group. Thank you for joining us after a long while. It's good to have you. Dorothy, Jebett, she is a journalist as well and has leaning towards politics and an interest towards politics and has been as well political analyst. Thank you for joining us. And we have new to the panel, John Walubengo. He is an ICT lecturer at Multimedia University and has quite some expertise to share as it pertains to the registration, at least the electronic registration, identification and hopeful transmission of results. And next to him, I have Bwire Limo. Andrew Limo is the PR manager, communications manager at the IEBC. I actually did make some calls to make sure that he comes. Thank you so much, sir. On your way, I made you come back. I really appreciate your time and also to your family. Victor Bwire is not new to this panel. Thank you very much. He is the programs manager at the Media Council. We'll be watching all media platforms and outlets this year moving into the elections closely in terms of ethics and what have you. So yes, back to our top focus here. President Uhuru Kenyatta this evening signed into law the controversial Election Laws Amendment Bill 2015. Now, the law allows the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to come up with a complementary backup to the electronic system in case it fails during the elections. Various stakeholders, including the opposition, had asked the president not to sign the bill into law, insisting it was a ploy to rig the elections. The opposition had threatened to go to the streets to protest its signing with the way forward from them expected this Thursday. In last Thursday's debate in the Senate, there were concerns of the law's unconstitutionality, with a section of senators vowing to go to the courts. Now, back to what has happened as well earlier today before the announcement of the bill being signed into law, being assented to. The IEBC announced it is set to launch the last round of mass voter registration next week, targeting about 6 million voters. And according to the Commission's Chief Executive Officer, the countrywide registration starts on Monday. That is next Monday. And IEBC also says it has contracted 15,000 personnel, including ICT support assistance, for the exercise. Now, I just want to put it to the PR manager at the IEBC on this particular issue, because it has been in the headlines the past several weeks, several days, just to be accurate, on whether this is an electronic registration, electronic identification, voter identification means, or electronic transmission mode that is being pushed for, and whether the manual process or backup, complementary backup plan is going to be manual. What exactly is the case in what you've seen being put out there in terms of the story?
Thank you, Mark, for having me. And I think it would be interesting to kind of bring to their attention the kind of narrative that has been created over time about this manual versus electronic. To the extent that you start finding that in the society, people have forgotten what we did a couple of years ago or during by-elections. What did we do? If you ask anyone, how did you register as a voter? They will tell you they put their fingers on the machine and their photographs were taken. And that's exactly what they did. We are getting so much surprised at IEBC that even at very high level, people you expect to have a lot of understanding are now talking about electronic voting. And I ask myself, what happened when you voted in 2013? You were given a piece of paper, a ballot paper to cross or to tick and put them in a box.
Right.
So the 15 million that we already have were registered electronically, except a few cases if there were people who did not have had problems with their hands, whatever, those were not registered. But everybody was registered electronically. So we have three facilitative technologies. We register electronically, we verify or check people, identify people electronically, and we transmit election results electronically.
Okay.
What we don't do electronically is the actual voting. If we were to do that, if we did that electronically, then we'll be pressing something in a gadget or something like that and transmitting your choice. But that's why we have ballot boxes.
Yes.
We wouldn't be having ballot boxes if we were doing electronic voting.
All right. And then what has the contention been? Philip Etale, you've been very keen and you critique the focus and perspective given out on many occasions. The opposition has been very vocal on this particular matter, especially saying that it is unconstitutional. What's the position?
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for welcoming me to the first show of the year 2017. And this is a year that Kenyans are going to decide their destiny. And now, back to your question. The bone of contention has been, you know, this issue of manual backup as a complementary backup plan for the 2017 general election. And this has been, it has caused a hue and cry from cross-section of Kenyans. You know, you will see the opposition guys saying, you know, this is not what was negotiated at the table. You know, remember when the opposition went to the streets, they pushed for reforms in the IEBC. And one of the issues they were pushing for, or rather one of the issues we were agitating for, was to have a free and fair election. But barely 3 months into the passage of the law by both houses of parliament, our competitors from the other side just decide that they want to make amendments to the law that was passed after several weeks of negotiations. It was a bipartisan approach,
yes,
where the Jubilee side had its members on the table, as well as the opposition side.
Okay.
So they agreed on these issues. And these issues were that we should have an election that will be very transparent, and it should be done electronically. We are not saying that we are going to vote electronically, because that has never happened in the country.
Yes.
We are not yet there. Voting is done manually, because you are given a ballot paper, you
That's right.
mark on it, and then
That's right. But you seem to not have a lot of faith in this process in terms of saying that these are the foundations of rigging.
Basically, yes. You know, why did they have to rush to Parliament to pass this amendment to have manual system as a complementary backup to electronic system?
Okay.
Is because they want to rig. They're preparing the country for rigging. And you know, this is what the opposition is not about to accept. And indeed, those in Jubilee, and even my brother Andrew Limo and his bosses, should know that the opposition is going to resist this. And you know, the signing of this law into this bill into law today by the president,
yes,
is tragic. And you know, it's legitimizing rigging in the country.
All right.
And this is going to happen. And if we are not very careful, if we don't put our feet on the ground and we say enough is enough and you're not going to allow this, then they will go ahead and do it.
All right. That's the position, as you've said. Victor Bwire, you've also watched the back and forth in terms of those who support, in terms of those who are against this manual complementary system, and the media is left to interpret, translate, and really give the implications of what is going to happen, the processes and the infrastructure that is being put in place. In your view, so far, has it been fair and actually very objective?
Thank you, Mark. I'll start by quoting Mwalimu Joe Kadhi, a veteran journalist.
Yes.
And he has talked about election reporting for media for quite some time. And we at the council also looked at it, that is the media helping in the debate? And it's a big no.
A big no.
We have not helped in helping people understand what the discussion is all about. We have got stuck in reporting on the game, the strategy, the game of strategy, instead of the substance of what is at hand.
Okay.
And for that reason, there's a lot of confusion. And what the media is doing by moving away from the substance of the issue to purely a game of strategy is to increasingly make Kenyans lose faith in the process that is coming.
All right.
And even the institution that will manage the election.
Okay.
Because in such an instance, why? Media has continuously been inviting people who have no idea about some of these issues to be experts. The final authority or body who would have given the final stand and quoted extensively on this matter will be IBC. What is it that I've planned and what is it? Because the elections are not going to be manned by either opposition or JAP. It's the duty and the business of IBC to run election.
Okay.
So the position of IBC on what it is, whether the amended laws or if the laws had remained the way they were, the implication is purely IBC to help us understand.
But there seems to be the notion that the position of IEBC is a position of government. Etale, looking at your phone,
which are very weird.
Are you following? I mean, yes, is this the case because you would feel then the opposition, and we're not here to make friends as media. We're there to represent the facts. But what would come off is that, no, IEBC is the government, so if you let them be the experts, then that means you're siding with the government. Is this something that is accurate?
I believe that's a fact here. The IEBC has not come out clear to the public and explained to them why this is happening. Okay. You know, as an electoral body mandated by the taxpayer to oversee a free and fair election, they owe it to the public an explanation as to how they're going to have this manual, whatever the amendment, the manual complementary backup as passed by the Jubilee members of National Assembly and the Senate,
yes,
under tight security. And you know, what worries a lot of Kenyans is the deployment of armed police officers in and outside parliament precincts during the debate of this contentious bill.
Okay, that's pouring a bit into something else, and I'll want to let.
I was just trying to
because we haven't had Dorothy and Bwana John there respond and give their overview so far of what they think, because we have just a couple of minutes before we take the first break. Dorothy, your quick synopsis of how this has been, the narrative has been managed on this issue.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I think the media has really done its job very well.
It has.
By dissecting how this new law will carry out the elections on August 8th. The problem is with IEBC that has not come out. It seems to be all the time siding with their government. It's not coming out really to tell the people what it entails to do on August 8th.
All right. I'll hold you on that point and go to John Walubengo. As an expert, an ICT expert, the question is it foolproof? Is it going to be tampered with? And in the representation of these facts, what have you seen that is amiss?
Okay. For me, first and foremost, the debate, as he said, has gone off the issue, because whether digital or manual is secondary. The primary issue is the integrity of the elections. And the electronic systems were brought in to support the integrity of those elections. Mm-hmm. For example, I just want to pick one component. There are three, but I'll pick the voter identification. The thing that you come, put your fingerprint, and it cross-checks and says this is Walu, so you can vote. Now, if that thing is not there, and you're doing the verification manually, then right there you realize that there is room for manipulation.
Okay.
You get. And so now the question becomes, what manual option can we put in place that still protects the integrity of the verification process?
Right.
If IEBC came forth and explained a complementary manual process that assures the opposition that the integrity of elections will be preserved, yes, I don't think there will be a problem.
All right.
But at the moment, people are just fighting over who is more digital and who is more analog.
Okay. All right. On that point, Bwana Limo, just allow me, because my director says we have to take a break, but I'll let you come back with your response to the issues that have been raised in this first pass. And the conversation here is on the electronic and manual system that is being proposed as a complementary system to the electronic voter registration, voter identification, and vote transmission. We're just getting some clarity here on people's understanding as what they've seen as the story plays out. Paperboy Rocks asks, Mr. Limo, what backup are you going to use on the 16th of January to register voters in case the BVR kits fail? And another one here, and this represents people's understanding across the board. Amon Bet says, if you can register voters electronically, why don't they vote electronically? So I'll start with those two, and we'll look at the others and respond.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I could first start by saying, quoting what a friend of mine asked me yesterday.
Yes.
And I quite agree. I said, suppose these technologies don't fail. I mean, nobody has has looked at it from that perspective,
yes.
Because what IEBC said.
But aren't they working with history that it's failed in the past?
Yeah, the fact
so
that
there's reason why they have
we didn't have
doubt.
any problem with BVR, the biometric voter registration. It worked perfect. That's the only system we registered people, and that's the only system we came up with.
Transmission tested?
It's the transmission that we had a problem,
yes.
And we have since fixed that.
Okay.
So I have the analogy of the safety features in a car. You don't die to use the airbag in the car. You know you have it, but you wouldn't want to use it.
Right.
And that's why we said as IEBC, and I want to answer my friend Philip, that when the new law came in, we looked at it and we only raised concern. IEBC does not make laws, we implement law. Mm-hmm. But if we find that there's a bit of a hitch here, we'll raise and say, hang on, there's a problem here. What do you expect us to do here? And if our clients, the political parties, came in and said, okay, fine, when you get to this, just let's all agree this is how you're going to do it. That suppose someone came and unfortunately has no hands and whatever, they said, tell that person to go home. We cannot register because the law says you must register biometrically. He doesn't have those biometrics, so we're not going to register him. IEBC would be glad to implement. Okay. And I've even seen Honorable Junet Mohammed say, which I quite agree, if you register people biometrically, it makes sense to identify them biometrically. That's true.
Okay.
Yeah. And so IEBC is working hard to have technology facilitated elections.
All right.
And so come 16,
next Monday,
just next week, we will register voters electronically.
Right.
If there is a problem with one kit, we will rush in another kit to be able to register them. And from history, since it worked perfect, and that's the only way we made the register, we're going to do it well.
But what of this complementary backup? What would it be?
What we've said, and my CEO was here a few minutes ago, and
yes.
I watched, and he said, we've borrowed so much from the Ghanaian example, and what they do is they have protocols to mitigate this. If there's a problem with an individual, and you see, the problem is we have primed technology rather than people. It's about people.
Okay.
Sometimes the technology has not failed, but it's the individual who has a problem. And we are saying in the isolated case, the very unlikely case, you have only one voter, and in an election, one voter could go to court and say, you didn't register me. Everybody else has no problem. Okay. So we said in that, what do we do? What protocols do we agree? Do we then bypass this and check on the, because if you see in the EVID machine, if you put the ID card, you could still conjure up the details of this person, including the facial.
Yes.
So could we use this and we agree and say this works in these isolated cases? Nobody is aspiring to evade technology. Nobody is going towards manual.
Yes.
Yeah.
You respond to the next one, but perhaps I'll put it to you. You can weigh in, Bwire Etale, that the concern here is that some voters, some regions will be locked out in this whole process. You'll probably respond to that and let us know if that is a concern. Yeah. There's someone who was asking if you can register voters electronically, why can't they vote electronically? Just to explain from a technical point of view.
From a technical point of view, I think Kenyans should know that the three electronic components that IEBC is using for now does not include electronic voting. Graphically speaking, electronic voting is the advanced level of where we intend to be. And from a voter's perspective, Electronic voting would be like you walk into a polling station, you don't actually get your ballot paper. Instead, you see on a screen the presidential candidate, the senator,
governors and what have you.
and your choice is to press a button.
Right. But we are not there yet.
We are not there yet, and I'm not seeing us being there in another 5, 10 years, maybe 10 years, yes.
Okay.
So we're not doing electronic voting. However, what we're doing is very crucial. We're doing biometric voter registration. That means we're capturing the voters' biometrics or biological features, which could be your fingerprints,
Right.
it could be your earlobe, it could be your facial, it could be your iris. So any of those is being captured. That's biometric voter registration. Why is it being captured? So that on the polling day, whatever was captured will be played back and cross-checked against you as a person.
Okay.
For example, if I captured your fingerprint, before you vote, I will prefer that you produce your fingerprint. In the sense that if you are unable to produce your fingerprint, then most likely you're a ghost voter.
Okay.
You get?
All right.
So there's that cross-checking, and the electronic voter ID does that cross-checking to make sure that whoever is voting is indeed whom they claim to be. And
the details cannot be tampered with in terms of regions, because that's a
In
concern
terms of?
by some, that probably a whole region could be wiped out.
No,
This is
no,
not
no,
a
no.
conspiracy theory. This is actual true
let
concern from people.
me be honest with Kenyans. The stealing, if it was to be done, is very simple. In a manual process, you will not have biometric finger authentication or verification. Instead, you'll have the polling clerks seated on a table with a list of potential voters. I think the law has changed now. You have 500 per polling station.
Yeah.
So you'll have a list of 500 people.
Back to 700.
Oh, back to 700.
Yeah.
And what happens as they get identified without biometrics, just with your national ID or probably the IEBC ID,
Yes.
your name is crossed out manually. Then you go and vote. Next, crossed out manually. At 5 o'clock, when the polls have closed, I have a list of 700 people. 500 showed up, 200 did not show up. What do? I cross them out, pick a ballot, vote for them,
Yes.
and dump in the ballot box. That is the rigging aspect.
So then this new electronic system would seem to be a welcome move.
The electronic system cures that,
Okay.
because once you are biometrically identified, the kit also keeps a tally of how many fingerprints it checked. And if 500 people showed up, the kit tally will be 500. Even if you stuff the ballot box with the balance of 200, this electronic kit will cross-check the physical.
Okay.
And right there, you'll be able to identify the gap or the dead voters.
So the contention here was that you don't want the backup to be manual.
Yeah, because it opens up those kind of manipulations.
But is that what's being pushed for? Is it going to be manual? Bwana Limo.
Backup, yes.
You see, as a backup, when we get to that unlikely situation,
Unlikely.
we must agree with our stakeholders and say in the regulations that this is the procedure that we will follow. But that's not what we are aspiring, as I said before.
But you know, Mark,
But contingency would suggest some would say.
the problem majority of Kenyans who want to vote for change are having the IBC is the insincerity that they have, because they're not coming out to tell us how this complementary manual backup is going to be affected. You know, when I was listening to the honorable members in the National Assembly from the Jubilee side and even at the Senate arguing in support of this manual backup, they were very vague. You know, they made the public to believe that, you know, if your fingerprint has a problem, like some senator was saying that where he comes from, a majority of the people there work in quarries. So therefore, their fingerprints cannot be identified in the biometrics. Their biometrics cannot be identified in the BVR kit and the AVID machine. So that was a very small, I would say it's a small thinking, kind of argument by a honorable senator. Because, during registration, this particular individual went and put their fingers on the machine.
All the 10. If one fails,
yes,
you can try the other.
and they were taken, they were captured. So how come when it comes to voting that their fingerprints cannot be captured again, cannot be identified? So that's what you're trying to say. If that argument is anything to go by,
yes,
then the country should prepare itself for the worst, because Jubilee government is hell-bent to rig this election. And with the support of the IEBC, which always says that it's independent, yet it listens to one side of the political divide to try and advance their theatrics and antics that they want to impose on the people, on the electorate,
give an opportunity
which
to
I
respond,
believe
but I want,
is not the case,
I
and
want
we should
Dorothy
not
to
allow
weigh
that
in
to
on this
happen.
because she hasn't
Yes,
spoken.
let me just weigh in on this. I want to support my brother Etale that the government is really hell-bent on rigging the elections. And they are setting the stage really well. We just heard the AG, Gitu guys, say that failure of electronic system is almost guaranteed.
Almost certain.
It is the nature of electronics
To fail.
What does that mean? Are we setting the stage for failure of the electronic system so that we now say we are going manually? And then, again, why did the Jubilee side of the government, the Jubilee parliamentarians, force the passage of the bill without really considering the other side, the views?
Okay. Bwire Limo, before you respond, Victor, you hear what's being said here, and at the bottom of it is there's a seed of doubt to the process, whether it is foolproof. And it is indeed something that would get the attention of Kenyans because they want to know that their vote, or their constitutional right in exercising the voting right is going to be protected. But where do we balance all this as media, not to just cause fear, but to also clarify the issues if there's true concern?
I think that's where we are, and that's why my concern with media, that we need to task IBC. The issue of voting or bringing experts from wherever political divide to make comments on this is causing more confusion and fear and creating doubts in the process that is coming. Let's put IBC, like my colleagues are saying, on spot. That what are you doing? What are you preparing? What are the implications of what is happening in Parliament? What makes out of it for your work? Okay. But once we shun out IBC out of this discussion, media course, and you can obviously see most of the experts over the last 1 week or so over this matter have been experts from the road, from everywhere, discussing, who have no idea about some of the implications of what is at hand, and which is causing more confusion than helping people understand some of. For the 2 minutes we have been here, you already start getting to understand a few things. So if we can help people understand and bring relevant people, including IBC, in this discussion, to help to be asked these hard questions on what are they planning, what are the implications of some of these things. If we are talking about voter education, at this level, how many sessions has IBC done with the media to help? Have media started all the election desks that we discussed, so that we have people who have now been following keenly and can ask relevant questions?
Right.
Because I have seen very serious commentaries by managing editors at that level on clear positions on what they think of this thing. But when you look at the other articles in the content, you see very confused reporting. Yes. Mara one, in the same newspaper, 3 articles, different things. So that is not helping us understand. So that's our concern, that media, we need to be consistent in what we're asking, sourcing our stories. Where are we sourcing our stories from? Yes. Why, for example, would I go for an MCA to comment on BVRC on voting, who has he has no expertise at all in some of these issues, instead of going for the IBC, ICU, or whatever it is? Because once we allow the political players to lead in the discussion, and what consistency is happening, that we in the game of strategy, it's consistently now being shown that Jubilee is winning in almost everything. And that's, I mean, in terms of those, whatever it is. And that's already creating tension in some areas.
Okay.
Are we as media going to do the same? We need to help in people trusting in a fair and credible election.
Well, when the opposition, and I'm putting it to him, well, when the opposition voices a concern and says this is actually the foundation of rigging and the IEBC is siding with the Jubilee government, then how do we represent that view? Not mute it, but represent it objectively enough for it to be addressed. Do you agree with what he says? You're siding with the government.
No, absolutely not. I think what my brother Philip and others have said is we must separate, and I think this is what must come out very clearly.
Yeah.
I've had people say here that IBC must come out, voter
Right.
education must come out. You see, IBC doesn't have the advantage to pass this message the way our clients would do at political rallies. So our message, we're in public service. So we cannot to play around with the message the way they have a more leeway to do these things, and they do it in their own way.
They can certainly
But
have
we'll
civic
give you
education.
facts.
Yes.
But if you, I'm quite agree, I couldn't agree more with my brother Bwire here. Who has ever come to IEBC, and in a society where we believe in science, to ask for empirical data and say, when you used BVR, how many of the people who came to register had problems? Nobody's talking about that. What is the failure rate? I mean, we should be informed. We are in a modern society that is informed by statistics. Nobody's coming out for this. So, you see, the Constitution, 88, Section 3 says we must make administrative arrangements to facilitate people to vote. We are working towards empowering and enabling people to participate in a democracy. And that is our preoccupation. That's what takes us to office every day in the morning.
Yes.
But you see, our clients, and we must separate what our clients say and those experts that Bwire said.
Your
from
clients
what
being
we
the
say.
Kenyans. Your clients being who? Because that
Political
people...
parties.
Political parties.
But, Mark, Mr. Limo,
you know,
when you talk about your clients and they like your choice of word, your clients are not coming out to the public and they talk about these issues. You know, it disturbs me because on numerous occasions, your clients have been out there talking so loudly about these ills that are happening in the IBC. But the rebuttal, the arrogant rebuttal from the bosses of the IBC, from the chairman, the outgoing chairman, to his commissioners, you know, puts your clients off, because when a client comes, when the IBC chair comes out in public to address the media and says, "This is a perennial loser," you know, as a person who is charged with the responsibility of ensuring a free and fair election, you are not supposed to discriminate against any of your clients. You must be impartial. You must show love to these political parties, the so-called clients of yours. And that's what is lacking in the IBC. And that's why most Kenyans have lost confidence in the IBC. And we want you, as the new commissioners come into office, we want the IBC to do things differently. We want the chairman to embrace love. We want commissioners to show that they respect their clients, the people that they are charged with the responsibility of ensuring that these clients are comfortable and that the election is going to be free and fair.
Respect and not favor.
Talking of the media,
Right.
as my brother
Shortly before I need
Bwire
to take
said,
another break, yes.
just briefly, I would say the media has taken a backseat on this. And today I was very, very perplexed when I met a few journalists somewhere. And they were telling us, you know, we are being told that we should support whatever government says about these electoral laws. I'll not mention names, but it shocked me because the government has no role in dictating to the media or journalists what to report. Okay. And that really disturbs most of us. Because if a journalist comes to me and tells me that, you know, somebody was sent to us to try and talk to us, we are being given, offered money, you know, that's what IBC should be investigating. Don't wait for political chaos in Homa Bay or wherever to start issuing statements. Start with these intimidations that are being pushed towards journalism by the state.
Some grave trends that you're pointing out there. And my director says, yes,
please,
just real quick.
On what Etale has just said.
Sure.
I would like to say something about what Limo also said on sitting in the office and no media is coming to him and you are the communications manager. If no one comes to you and you see your clients outside there talking and not representing their views, the actual views or the right information about this manual thing, why don't you issue a press release to the media and tell them really the correct position of what is happening, rather than wait and then come here and complain that no media has come to me, and that you are there to be the communications person. You should be out there telling, writing to the media or giving them information, the right information, if they did not come to you. You are leaving people just wandering outside there, not knowing what to do.
Right. I think I'm shouting from rooftops, and she's telling me, why are you not shouting from rooftops? That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here.
Sure. We take with great concern the issues raised by Philip. While there have been concerns about embedded journalists who have embedded themselves with political parties and the rest, and the fact. And we have raised this matter to that effect, and we are asking that people come forward and bring us such information so that we take action, because there's no profession, for that matter, that is wrong. We have rules and regulations that guide media practice in this country. Right. While I accept there are journalists who have been embedded themselves with various parties, but there are no media houses that have political positions or have already given policies that they will align themselves or take positions or to support any parties. But we know individual journalists who are doing this, and we have obviously picked out a few. You remember we issued a statement to that effect, and we are encouraging people to talk. Because just like we are putting IBC under scrutiny, we are putting other people, police, security, what they are doing, we need also people to put journalists and accountability. I mean, if journalists are going to report and be respected, then they must also be accountable. Right. And we want people to be actively involved in getting us to understand which of these journalists. We have raised issues with various media houses about embedded journalists with political parties and wherever parties, and we need more people for action to be taken. And we are asking that Media Council will revoke practicing lines, certificates for journalists where we have evidence. Let people not fear about reporting journalists where they are behaving unprofessionally.
So you know them and you're going to revoke?
Quite a number of, where we have evidence, one of the challenges we have, and I can be frank, one of the challenges the Media Council has is we don't have a police department. So once somebody brings a complaint that a journalist was, for example, bribed, we need to involve the CID, we need for investigation purposes. But there are obvious cases where we have obvious cases, and I can tell you for sure action will be taken.
Okay, just hold on, gentlemen and lady. But Don Quicksort says, what Walubengo has said about the system should be repeated over and over again, and I'll give you an opportunity to emphasize some of the points, especially from a technical point.
There are two other systems I had not talked about.
From a technical point. We have some more time just after this short break. We'll be back in a bit. Let's pass with the last leg here of the conversation on whether the electronic system that is being implemented and the complementary system that will be put in place. The last phase of the voter registration will begin on Monday and is targeting 6 million voters. Now, with the passing of the Elections Law Amendment Bill 2015 into law, one would think that any opposition to this is water under the bridge. Well, there was plenty of back and forth on this in the past week, and that has been mentioned by our panelists here. Just last week, the Attorney General and the Council of Governors differed on whether IEBC should revert to manual backup in case the electronic one fails. Governors, just like other stakeholders who appeared before a joint Senate committee, said if there must be backup, it should use satellite. Here's a story that was put together by Kennedy Mureithi.
The Attorney General told a joint Senate committee of the Legal and Human Rights Committee and the ICT committees that it will be unwise for the country to head to the next elections without a backup. Gedho Mwigai insisted this amendment came from the IEBC.
The failure of the electronic system is almost guaranteed because that is the nature of electronics.
The AG is, however, proposing consultations between election stakeholders that will lead to regulations to eliminate suspicion by political players.
In order to make this voting efficacious, we must promulgate regulations, because that's where the worry is. We must promulgate regulations that make it absolutely clear under what circumstances do you resort to the manual system. And that must be very detailed, very clear, very widely negotiated.
But the Council of Governors differed with the proposals from the AG, insisting reverting to a manual backup was mischievous.
Are we saying the alternative is to split using a Farasi all the from 16S from Garissa to Nairobi? What is that you are talking about, the alternative? The alternative is just some strange cooking.
The recent by-elections in Turkana and Tana River wards, satellite telephony was used because there is no mobile telephony there.
Governors say the bone of contention is identifying voters as they arrive at polling stations to avoid a scenario where either the dead or those absent are counted as voters.
Between 2013 and the next election, every 5 years, you have about 2 million voters that don't exist, that needs to be expunged from the register of voters. But as far as I know, there isn't a mechanism of how to remove a voter from the register. And the only way you do it is if you go through a registration process.
The real issue is the voters who don't turn up, and we end up voting for them manually, identifying them manually.
So that has been the tone, at least, of the stories that have played out, at least last week, when there was a great push with the Senate being the last hope there to either pass it or not. And of course, it was passed and assented to by the president earlier this evening. Now, it, of course, is something that has been raised here, and the AG himself saying that electronic system is bound to fail or is prone to failure. And that's what everyone is asking here. At least that is the common thread in the questions being asked. No one has clearly put it in terms of what the fallback complementary plan will be. And what are the options, or at least what do you know is in place?
Okay. There are three components, and each of these three components has different failure options. You get, so it's not like, for example, what the AG was talking about. You know, if the mobile phone fails, I don't know, no, it wasn't the AG, the CS, the Minister Musheru for ICT, was saying that the mobile phone network can collapse, and then that will make it impossible to transmit results, which is true. Mm-hmm. But the alternative digital backup to a mobile network failing is there, satellite.
Right.
So the component of results transmission can fail, yes, as much as it's rare. I mean, how many times does Safaricom fail? But assuming it fails, you can use satellite. Or what the regulator said, there are some sections where the mobile network doesn't exist, which is true. Again, the digital option is satellite. So as far as the results transmission discussion is concerned, from my technical analysis, there are sufficient digital failover systems. Now, the challenge will be at the voter identification, because the voter identification does not require a mobile network. It is just the voter and the computer. And if the computer fails, the one identifying the voter fails, what is the digital backup to that? Those are the questions we should be asking. And from my analysis, you could, because it's just a laptop, if there's no power, you could have battery. If there's no battery, there's generator. If there's no generator, there is solar. In other words, there are multiple levels of digital solutions that you can provide for before you fall back to manual. Okay. So manual should not be eliminated, but neither should it be your first choice. And the way the discussions in Parliament and Senate have proceeded, from my analysis again, it seems like manual is the preferred option.
Okay.
Why do I say this? Because the election law that the president had signed before the amendment was brought actually made electronic systems mandatory. So that forced IEBC to have BVR, to have EVID, and to have RTS by law. If they didn't, somebody could go to court and challenge them. What the new amendment does, and it reads, notwithstanding, whatever that was passed before, we should have a complementary system. So from my layman interpretation, it seems like the complementary, whatever form it may be defined eventually to be, takes a higher priority.
Okay.
And that is where the battle is, where one side feels that the priority for manual is proportionally too much compared to the reasons why you want manual, that people don't have fingerprints.
Yes.
The amount of power and effort marshaled to make sure that the complementary becomes a reality really raises a lot of question marks.
Yeah, but I think in the whole of this debate, what my worry is that we also lose the gist of the issue. It's about trust.
Yeah.
If people say it could be manipulated, that people could use this to rig elections, the most fundamental issue to me is that is there such capacity in IEBC to do that? You know, I mean, we are awake to this country. We are, the people working in IEBC, I mean, they mean well for this country. And we work hard to make sure that things work very well, and we are people of integrity. We have involved our stakeholders. Even this morning we were with the media. Tomorrow we're meeting political parties. We're meeting all the stakeholders to engage them and to ask them and to make sure that they all understand the process. What the AG said, and I think the context he meant was that, I mean, it is possible for technology to have problems.
Right.
But he said, again, which I think we're losing, that he said, in the event that happens, there must be very stringent measures understood and accepted by all parties on what to follow in terms of mitigating that particular issue.
Okay.
If you're carrying a kit and somehow falls down and breaks, what do you do? There must be very elaborate whatever. But I think this debate is just lost into those issues of money. In the whole law and all the technology issues, we've lost quite a number of issues.
Right.
When you talk about the satellite, for example, that's not a big deal. We will have the satellite phones. In fact, our worry is the cost of deploying satellite rather than whether they work or not. They work.
Okay.
And we've used them before. But it's such huge costs, up to 140,000 per polling station.
The reason perhaps has dwelt on whether electronic or manual is because that is how it has come out, that it is one or the other.
Yeah.
And is that the case come Monday, moving into the last phase of registration, that if electronic, at least the options he's given us, that is manual, as we understand it, the only other option to the registration, identification,
Simple
and transmission?
answer, Mark. We registered in the up to from before 2013.
Yes.
Thereafter, in continuous voter registration and mass voter registration, first phase, we registered 15 million through biometric means. There was no other means of putting people in the register. Right. So if we did that and we had 15 million, why are we worried in a target of 6 million? What has happened that it will
People
fail
are just
now?
asking what would be the backup plan.
Let me help there. Again, there are three components. The voter registration component, by the way, is not in dispute.
Yes.
Both sides of the political divide. And IEBC is doing biometric voter registration. Even the amendment does not refer to biometric voter registration, because if you came to register and the kit is not working, you'll be told come in the afternoon because you have 30 days to play around with. But on voting day, you don't have 30 days to play around with.
Right.
That's why the same kit on voting day suddenly changes the dynamics. If I came in the morning and my fingerprint is not working, you can't tell me come tomorrow. So at that moment in time, then the backup becomes critical.
Okay.
What backup can we put in place to enable this voter to vote even if he has no fingerprints? And the IEBC or the parliament was fighting to enable that backup to be allowed in law. The problem is that backup has, up to now, has not been defined other than being called a complementary system. My own analysis is that whatever backup IEBC comes up with, it should have the same level of integrity as the electronic one.
All right.
If it doesn't, then there's a problem.
There's a problem.
And
Okay.
there is a problem.
And that's what you're
Yes, that's what you're contesting.
And that's why, to me, from a media perspective, these things have happened elsewhere. Are we helping by showing examples in South Africa, in Ghana, why it has happened and what happened?
Yeah.
Because as an institution, media is supposed to help in voter education. Civic education, we have a civic duty to do. So that in this debate, are we having columns or such fora where we are saying studies, case studies from other countries, this work, this did not work. I know Kenya is unique. Our high level of mistrust in everything is unique in its own way, but it has a background. There's a reason why the Kenyans are always suspicious. But let's help in bringing sanity in the whole debate. What are the issues that would help us have a credible, fair election? Okay. The issue of peaceful elections, again, we are going back to 2013, where we are, again, media was supposed to have helped in the peace, the militarization of peace in the country. For this time, we want media to help in us having a credible, fair, and acceptable election. And are we going to help by quoting everybody, Tom and Harry and Dick, on issues they have no capacity about? If you ask Victor to comment about vote, and I have no idea. I mean, I would be lying. Yes. So let's also help in the process by bringing sanity in the whole debate. That are we raising these issues that would help in Kenyans getting better, get out to vote in an election that will be acceptable? Okay. Or are we becoming part of the game and just stuck with the game of strategy? Why code Jubilee, what they are doing in their strategy instead of confusing everybody? Are we also helping in the confusion?
Absolutely. If today people, and we're going to step up voter education, it's an area that we're really putting a lot of focus. If people understood these processes, because by default, if you don't understand anything about technology, the default would be, well, you have fears about it, so you think it's not going to work. But once you understand, then you know there's not much a deal here. Okay. Look, I saw a tweet today. Someone said, why can't you not register us electronically? People want to do it registration from their home. Then they forget again, how will we get your fingers? Because the people that want to M-Pesa their registration.
All right, let's get to the last. I'm giving you an opportunity for our last comments here as you respond to that. Philip Etale, he says they're going to be meeting you, the political parties, tomorrow. As this conversation moves to the next phase, now registration starts on Monday. Your keen appeal to the media, what would it be?
First, before I respond to your question, I want to talk to something that I heard from the AG, that the amendment, this contentious amendment to Article 44 of the original law was proposed to government by the IEBC. That one, Mr. Limo, has not disputed. Number two, this complementary manual backup, how that question is still lingering in the minds of many Kenyans. How is it going to be executed? Are we going to have an extra 2 million voters voting for the president only and not other electable positions? That's a question that nobody has ever bothered to answer. And I believe it's only God who can answer for us, because if man cannot answer just a simple question, how 2 million votes came to vote for the president? Are they dead voters? You know? So what I'm trying to say is we must be practical, we must be sincere, and we must be true to ourselves, that this manual, complementary manual backup, as pushed by the Jubilee government, advised by the IEBC, is mischievous.
Right.
And if we are not going to address it amicably, then Kenya will go into turmoil. I'm not afraid to say this, because Kenyans are not ready to accept a stolen election again.
Right.
About the media.
Yes. Time bad, yes.
About the media and how it has conducted itself on this issue, it's wanting, and we believe the media must be impartial. We want the media to exercise that role of being the public watchdog and not the government's watchdog. Because what the IBC and government say is what the media says. If the opposition raises an issue, they'll have to...
The media also reflects the same, no?
It does, but they have to spin it in a way to look like the opposition is just whining all the time. Opposition is not whining. There are a lot of pertinent issues that the opposition raises,
okay,
which must be addressed.
Right.
But the media has refused to address this,
okay,
to raise them to the public.
All right. Dorothy, last comments in terms of this conversation moving forward and how the media should carry it, given what we've been told and you know, advice.
Yeah, Victor has really said a lot about the media, and I would like to buttress that the media really should do its best. Although I think we should give credit to some media houses that have done their bit very well. It's just a few media houses that are really bringing problems and confusing the public about what this entails.
Right.
Because they are embedded, as we say, they are sleeping with maybe those in power, and they want to they want to give their views according to what the government wants to hear.
Okay, all right. From a technical point of view, as we explain the issues moving forward, he said something about examples.
From the technical point of view, I want Kenyans to understand the last component, the reason why it's critical.
Yes.
Results transmission is not just there to entertain Kenyans that so and so has moved ahead, the other one has gone behind. No. Results transmission plays another critical role. The fact that results are streaming in randomly denies anybody the luxury or the stability required to calculate what amount of votes they may need to pass the magic 50% plus one. You get? If, for example, IEBC releases results every 2 hours, within those 2 hours, clever people will be able to estimate how many votes do I need in my strongholds, whether in Nyanza or in Tarakaniti, in order to cross 50% plus one. With results transmission, Etale's people will not be able to do that mathematics. Neither will the Jubilee people. So the critical component of these electronic systems is to eliminate such mischief. And if it's not working, it implies the mischief is working. So it is upon Kenyans to work hard and ensure that it's working. Unfortunately, because the law has changed, because previously it was saying they must work, now the law says they may work. It means somebody can deliberately decide, today this EVID is not working, and I have a manual system. So this is the issue.
Okay.
This is the impact of what the president has signed in. And it's good the media is inviting people who know the technicality of these things to break it down. Because if you don't break it down, you find Kenyans just taking sides. I know half of his supporters don't even know the difference between RTS, EVID, and whatever.
Yes.
So long as Baba has said, they're on the streets.
I think that's why we needed civic education.
Right.
And so we need,
has refused.
No,
we
speaking
need to break this down
break
for
it down.
Kenyans to make decisions.
Yes,
Yeah.
and speak to civic education.
Yeah.
Andrew Limo, as you also give your last comments.
Yeah, but I think you know that for us, we were more concerned with voter education rather than civic education,
Right,
because they are two different issues. But again, I want to say there are issues, what my brother has thrown in a few hardballs here and there, which he has even assumed there are no answers. And said God can only be left with that. We have the answers, but I wish we would have another forum. We will answer all those questions. We have all those answers, including the issue of Kericho versus Malindi. And I remember we showed to journalists in Naivasha, and they actually came back and said, why didn't you explain this?
Yes.
That people were comparing a constituency, and we have the logs from the servers. We mean well, as I said before.
Okay.
But it's even, I could only want to answer one aspect that my brother raised in terms of proposing these laws. We proposed some of the aspects of these laws from the experience of 2013 and all the other elections that we have held. We said, I think there's a problem here. For example, we said, let's have a maximum of 700 voters per polling station, because we wanted to remove the pain of long queues.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's 500 was suggested, and we said, okay, 500 has financial implications. I mean, you can create efficiency by putting in more resources.
So
if you put more money, we employ more people. There's no problem about that.
Right.
Yeah, it's not that really that IEBC gets hard about this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about investment versus returns. Yeah.
All
But overall, we're telling you the scenario is changing. We're putting more effort, and especially on education, because we realize that has been so much of our undoing.
All right. Thank you. Victor Bwire, and speak also to the embedded journalists and the action you'll take. I'm sure some are watching.
And the education should also include the media, because once these are the people we depend on to educate others, if they are not informed, you see the challenge. So we need more engagement between IBC and media, and I'm requesting media to be heard, professional on IBC to get the right answers for Kenyans. In journalism, if you want to be good all the time, then you'll never do a good job. And you can equally be hard on IBC, be professional, not harass them, but get the answers for Kenyans.
And maybe you can ask people who specialize also on elections, so that like they take that training. And
it's a keen focus.
We are working actually with the media houses to establish election desks for this election. That Amanda, I know Nation has already established one with the managing editor already in charge. We are encouraging other media houses to do the same, so that we help in getting people who consistently and would follow and reporting issues. Two, it's unprofessional for any journalist to get to scoop stories for whatever reason. That's unprofessional, unethical.
Or to be working for a political party.
I mean, embedded journalism is not allowed. Even you remember, even under the military, once you embed yourself with the military under the Geneva Convention, you lose protection as a journalist. So if you are going to embed yourself with the various political parties or sectarian parties, it's your own risk. Action will be taken immediately.
Action being?
Action one, you can be, we will register you from our register.
So
we will get back our media card, a press card, and will not allow you to work. Obviously, we'll write to your media house demanding that you be relieved of your duties, because those are powers in the Act.
Okay.
We can fine you, we can bring you to the Complaints Commission, so that you are taken. There's name and shame, there's all, the Act provides what we can do to such a journalist. So we are requesting journalists to be professional in their work.
Is this to that? Yes.
While endorsement is allowed, and media house can endorse any candidate, that's allowed, it's not breaking any law. You can endorse, I mean, so long as in our democracy, so long as you are ready for the repercussions. But professionally, you can endorse any candidate you want.
Before. Really quick.
Mark, I would like to give credit to the media in Ghana. And I have a colleague, a friend of mine who is a classmate who works in one of the leading media houses in Ghana, Manasseh Azuri, who told me that the media in Ghana is free and independent. And that's why the media in Ghana, like Joy FM, the biggest media house in Ghana, which this friend of mine works for, had a tallying center. They had people in every polling stations who are giving results. And actually, when the results came out, they also tallied with the same. Actually, they were the same results that these guys had. So if the IEBC and the government of Kenya could allow media free space to execute their mandate and give us results, like in the West, US, you find CNN having results, you know. And
Calling
there's no
someone
problem with
else,
that.
yes. All right.
But in Kenya, you'll find, you know,
The law
government.
outlaws, obviously, that was outlawed.
Yes.
If you look at even the code of ethics does not allow media to
Being
do their
able to
independent
project some of the-
tallying.
yes.
So that was done by. But what we are asking media houses is that it's not a parallel tallying, but we want media houses to have a very, a way of working
Accurate,
together
yeah.
so that we get verifiable information on media at this election.
right.
We are asking media to stop this cheap competition for news so that we work together as a team. At the end of the day, we'll be judged as a professional contribution to the elections instead of just having been fighting and fighting for.
And the police should not harass
One word,
media personnel when they're on duty,
You're
like what happened
you're a lady, I'll
the
give
other
you
day.
one word. Really have to wrap it up.
Okay.
Really quick.
Just word to Victor. You know that there are fake journalists who are they are all over the place giving a bad name to real journalism, real journalists who are really working hard. What are you doing about them?
Okay, this is something that will be done, I believe. If you have the names, put it to him.
We have a verification number right now, toll number, where you can call and verify if a journalist is right. 2, fake and quack is criminal. We are taking journalists to court, and various in Mombasa, we have already arrested 2 in Keleb. So if you get any, impersonation is a crime in Kenya. And once there's such a case, just refer to us and action will be taken.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Victor
much.
Bwire, and he is at Vic Bwire on Twitter, because the conversation ends here but continues online. And as you know, this next week it'll set the agenda definitely. Thank you very much, Bwana Andrew Limo, at Andrew_Limo on Twitter. And thank you very much for your technical views on this and advice at J. Walu, that is John Walubengo, a multimedia university lecturer on ICT. And also thank you very much to Jebett, Dorothy Jebett, that's Jebett with a double T on Twitter, and at Etale Philip on Twitter. These are questions and also concerns that you could direct to them from what you have heard being raised. It's something that has been raised here, and this is a funny one as I wrap it up with Kinyanjui Reports. Our Karaoke says, Mark, what are those papers that you are holding yet you have a laptop? Manual? Yes, is this a manual backup? Well, I guess that is, because indeed that is what I'm backing up with in reading up Kinyanjui's report. Thank you.